Lockheed will fight vigorously to get this merger through. They like the idea of the critical mass and the advantages they can take from the advanced radar operations of Northrop Grumman.
Joining me now from St. Louis with some insight on that story is aerospace analyst Glenn Stewart of A.G. Edwards. Hi, Glenn. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Valerie.
All right, so talk to me. What do you think of this merger? Does it make sense?
Well, yes, it does make sense. In hindsight, back in the early 90s when the former and late great former Secretary of State Les Aspin had did his bottom-up review regarding the Pentagon and its future needs, he had clearly saw it and believed that that this shipbuilding industry could consolidate much farther from what it was at the time, roughly 6 shipyards, now getting closer to 3.
Well, it was inevitable, and that, I think, kind of is the sense that analysts of this sector are looking at. But when we look at Newport News, is Newport News not in somewhat of a safe harbor now because they still have the Avondale deal that is working, Avondale? Talk to me a little bit about that and how they're going to decide.
Well, from a safe haven standpoint and an investment standpoint, Newport News had always been considered a safe haven, excluding its commercial operations, in that it does not sell to any of the Asian countries and as well as Russia. Its primary customer was the U.S. Pentagon. Now, what they will bring to the table and what could be more attractive to them with General Dynamics is that General Dynamics has other platforms that are complementary to the expertise of Newport News. Newport News is really primarily known for building aircraft carriers. And with a annuity type of revenue stream, it would be nice to have something in addition to the aircraft carrier revenue stream.
Glenn, I understand, though, that Newport News is saying that unless the General Dynamics offer is clearly superior to the one with Avondale, that they really wouldn't consider this proposed merger. So what would it take to make the General Dynamics deal more superior?
Well, no pun intended, but loose lips sinks ships. I just spoke with General Dynamics maybe a half an hour ago, and of course, all the details are not out. General Dynamics as well has stated that their deal is much superior to that of Avondale. As well, General Dynamics, at least for their shareholders, has yet to do a deal that has not been accretive to their earnings. And you have to remember that Newport News holds roughly 75% debt to capitalization.
Newport News and General Dynamics, though, aren't they already in a partnership?
Yes, they are in a partnership to build a new attack submarine. This was done really out of the finessing of the Pentagon to avoid closing one shipyard. In the case to where you typically would have a winner-take-all type of win. Here, they split it between the two only shipbuilders of this sort, and by this means, they are able to keep open both of the shipyards and alleviate some arguments in Congress between the congressmen.
Glenn, how important is this deal as we look at General Dynamics and its future? Is this deal critically important in shaping General Dynamics' future?
Well, yes. If you remember, back in 1990, General Dynamics was a $10 billion company, and really was the one who formed the phrase downsizing to the point to where they had downsized the company down to $3 billion just maybe 1 or 2 years ago. Since then, they have done a 180 and have started to acquire smaller niche businesses that are complementary to their expertise. With acquiring Newport News, it does add a tremendous platform to their backlog of business. And as well, their only means of growth has been through acquisitions, given the suppressed defense budget and the mediocre type of business there.
Okay, Glenn, good to see you. Thank you so much.
The general health of Boeing is somewhat critical at this stage. I mean, they do have a heartbeat and a pulse, but I don't think they could take too many laps around the track.
Mr. Stewart, do you expect the EC to vote against the Boeing-McDonnell-Douglas merger?
Yes. So far it looks like all thumbs are down regarding the merger. They have not been satisfied with the concessions that Boeing has made up to this point, and from all sources at this point in time, it looks like they will reject the proposed merger between the two companies on Wednesday.
What do you think will happen if Boeing goes ahead with the merger anyway?
Well, I believe that they will go back to the table eventually and still try to negotiate, you know, a happy medium between the company and the EU it really boils down to the art of negotiation at this point for Boeing, and hopefully they will find this happy medium.
What more do you think Boeing could do as far as concessions?
Well, it's kind of tough to say. The meetings have been behind closed doors, and it's really tough to say exactly what Boeing will do. I believe they will bend but not break. And of course, some of the issues on the table are obviously the exclusive deal with Delta, Continental, and American Airlines. The other is obviously the R&D transfer of information between their space division and commercial. And obviously, in aggregate, the financial stronghold that Boeing will have in comparison to Airbus.
Mr. Stewart, President Clinton has raised the possibility of a trade war with Europe if the EC comes down on Boeing. What could he realistically do to Europe that would not hurt Boeing? I mean, let's face it, Boeing does have a lot of business in Europe.
It's kind of tough to say what he can do without hurting Boeing, but what could potentially be done, or what has been mentioned, is that the White House is considering perhaps some tariffs against those customers who may purchase Boeing aircraft. Now, of course, as a customer, that may be another consideration in your ultimate decision to purchase a Boeing airplane.
Now, if the Boeing merger does go through, what's the outlook for Airbus?
Well, it's tougher competition. It's not to say any tougher than it has been, but of course with the combined efforts of McDonnell Douglas that has a facility in Long Beach, California that is under production, if you will, under capacity. And with Boeing and is reaching peak production, it can use the extra capacity that McDonnell Douglas can add.
Well, let's consider the shareholders for a moment. What do you expect is going to happen with the stock of Boeing and McDonnell Douglas through all of this?
Well, I still see a positive upside to the stock at current levels. I see a good 15% from this position today. As well, McDonnell Douglas's stock does trade in line with Boeing, and currently about at a 3% discount. But long term, I find the stock in the 63, 65 ballpark area in, say, 12 months. That could be considered conservative, depending on what the synergies are and the cost savings that can be found in the merger.
Okay, well, thank you for your thoughts.
Thank you.
Glenn Stewart, Boeing analyst with A.G. Edwards.